You do not want lower prices. That is what the Washington Post said today. It has gotten a lot of people angry, to say the least, people on the left and on the right. And I get why, because obviously you hear, oh, prices are dropping. You think that's a good thing, right? But this article from the Washington Post, it is called Why You May Not Want Lower Prices as Much as You Think You Do. They're actually right, guys. And it highlights the very simple fact, which is that nobody in America or anywhere in the West really understands economics at all, and it is a huge problem. It is why Trump's approval on the economy is abysmal. Right now, if you look, he's in the high 20s, low 30s, which is not going to win him the midterms. It is not good. And if you stick with me, by the end of this video, you will know why prices dropping would be a horrible thing. And this article is actually quite well written. Here's what the article says. They start off, they say, the U.S. economy is in a weird spot. Inflation has cooled dramatically since its 2022 spike of about 9%. As of October 2025, the consumer price index was up just 2.6% from a year earlier, close to the Federal Reserve's 2% target. Unemployment is a low 4.1%, and consumer spending remains strong, powering most of the nation's growth. Still, prices aren't falling. They're just rising more slowly. And once prices go up, they rarely come back down. Gas might fluctuate, but your rent or the cost of a haircut, those stick. This creates a paradox. The economy is humming along, but people feel broke. Surveys show 70% of Americans think prices are too high, and 60% say they're worse off financially than a year ago. Okay, so I mean, I'm surprised by that number. 70% of Americans think prices are too high. I think that number could be 100%. I think we all wish prices were lower. But what they're saying here is the damage is done. Things are getting worse, but at a slower rate under Trump than they were under Biden, and we're still hurting big time from that inflation from Biden, because wage growth did not quite match inflation, or at least it doesn't feel for many people in many industries. And this is where we get into deflation, which is when prices actually drop because currency becomes worth more. This is what the Washington Post says. They say deflation happens when prices fall across the board, often because demand dries up, people stop buying, companies cut production, workers lose jobs. It sounds like a sale, but it's more like a fire sale signaling doom. Consider the Great Depression. From 1929 to 1933, prices plunged 25%. People delayed purchases, expecting even lower prices tomorrow. Businesses slashed wages, laid off workers. Debts became harder to pay as dollars gained value. The spiral lasted years. Again, that mortgage that you have gets cheaper. I'm taking an interlude here in the middle. That mortgage that you have gets cheaper every year because of inflation. Under deflation, the opposite is true. I'll continue. Japan's lost decade in the 1990s was similar. After an asset bubble burst, prices stagnated or fell. Banks hoarded cash, companies zombified, and growth flatlined for a generation. Even mild deflation is trouble. In 2008, during the financial crisis, oil prices crashed 70%. It felt like a relief at the pump, but it hammered energy jobs and exporters. So again, if you're in Pennsylvania or maybe Texas and you work in oil refinery, the consumers are looking around and they're thinking, sweet, gas is $150. This is awesome. But there's 50,000 people, or frankly more, there could be 1 million people losing their job in the oil industry because of a depression that hits. They continue saying, today targeted price drops like in tech, where gadgets get cheaper, are fine. They reflect innovation, but broad declines, that's when the Fed panics. We're walking a tightrope, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said in a recent speech. Too hot and inflation burns. Too cold and the whole economy freezes. So in other words, guys, the only time deflation occurs or prices drop is when we go into a recession and nobody has jobs. That's the problem. I've heard a lot of people out there, especially my age, because I'm Gen Z and a lot of us can't buy houses right now. It's very difficult. I've heard a lot of people saying that they want the housing market to crash so they can buy a house. And the problem is that's a horrible idea, because if that happened, you would not have a job to buy the house in the first place. You couldn't buy the dip. The only people that might be able to survive that are rich people who would then be able to buy up more houses. So that's not a good thing. The Post continues. They say high prices aren't all bad. They've juiced corporate profits, which hit record highs in 2024. That money funded hiring sprees and wage increases. That's why we've got pretty good employment rates right now. They say average hourly earnings are actually up 20% since 2020, outpacing inflation. In some sectors like manufacturing, higher prices encourage investment in automation and supply chains, making the economy more resilient. Quote, think of it this way. If eggs are $7 a dozen, farmers can afford to expand flocks or pay workers better, said a Midwestern grocery shopper named Maria Lopez, pushing her cart through a Kansas City store. I miss cheap food, but if prices dropped that much now, I'd worry that my neighbor's factory job would vanish overnight. That is all true. Here is the conclusion that they come to, and I think that this is very wise. They say lower income households who spend most of their money on essentials feel inflation acutely. A 25% grocery spike hits harder when you're living paycheck to paycheck, but deflation could be worse for them. Job losses ripple fastest through service and blue-collar work. In the Depression, unemployment topped 25%. Economists like Zandy model this out. They say a 1% deflation shock could shave 2% off GDP and add 1.5 million jobless claims in a year. Inflation is a tax on the poor, but deflation is a guillotine. So the trade-off really comes down to this, guys. Would you rather have prices rise slowly or lose your job? And this is what a lot of people are not considering because, again, they don't understand economics. That's why I'm talking about this in the video. Both are bad, obviously, but one is so much worse. So much worse. And the problem we're having right now is as prices rise, people want free handouts. You go to the grocery store, it's too expensive. So you want healthcare subsidies. You want food stamps. You want clean EV credits. All of those things, all that does is make things more expensive. They're literally turning to the source that has caused the problem, which of course is government. And it's for as much as I struggle with Thomas Massey and how much he frustrates me with his political antics, he is absolutely right that all of our problems are coming from government spending. If you stop that, you stop the inflation and you don't have deflation either. In 1 month, guys, we are at the 150th anniversary of our country. And in celebration of that, Quick Tax America is doing all federal tax returns for only $76. That's right, $17.76, $76. They're fantastic. Again, they will do any federal tax return for you. All you have to do is fill out a 15-minute questionnaire so that they can understand your taxes. You then have a 15-minute call with a tax professional, and that's it. They do all the work for you for way cheaper than the big guys, and the big guys make you do all the work. Go check them out right now. The link is in the description below.